All right, ready?
Yep.
All right. Welcome to another edition of the Roll Toddy Draft Blog. I'm Baker Lehman here with Herbie May. And as the Combine's now just about a week past us, we can start to update our big boards. And Herbie May and I have created new big boards here for the Roll Tide Draft Blog. And Herbie, let's talk about some of our risers and fallers thanks to the Combine. And now we've started up with – that sucked. I'm going to redo that.
Okay.
Like that. Okay.
You want to just talk? You want to just talk about now, just like for like 2 seconds about like now the combine's in, we've got a much better grasp. Just like talk about like the overall draft for 2 seconds and just be like what we were talking about last night.
Yeah, let's do that.
And then just ease into it.
Then dive in. Yeah, good call.
Okay.
One, two. Welcome back to another post here on the Roll Tide Draft Blog. I'm Baker Lehman here with Herbie May. And now that the Combine's in the rearview mirror, Herbie, we can really start to get a grasp on this NFL draft that's coming up in May and some of the wackiness that's really going to ensue. I know you and I were talking about last night how even with all these new numbers and measurements out for all these prospects, there's just so much that's up in the air and so much to talk about.
Yeah, like you said, we talked about it last night. There's so much unsurety this year. I mean, how many years are you going to guess? I think you and I both got 7 out of the first top 10 picks right last year, and I don't think that's even I don't think anyone can do that this year. There's so much that can happen, so many different needs, so many different positions, and really just a level playing field in everyone's big board this year that it will be all over the place. So, yeah, the Combine helped a little bit. It helped weed out kind of who's truthful and who isn't. But, as far as risers and fallers, I didn't have too many. I think I had 6 big ones, but, there weren't too many huge changes. No one really kind of fell off my big board in a major way or rose in a major way. So I think it's such an equal playing field this year. It's gonna be a fun draft. I think you and I both know that.
Absolutely. We talked a lot about last night how there were guys who obviously should have gone number 1. Clowney was a sure thing going number 1. We all expected it. We might not have always said that was going to happen, but we were pretty sure that if it wasn't Clowney, it was going to be 1 or 2 other people. There wasn't as much up in the air. There was a lot more flow to, well, if this guy goes here are the next 5 picks. No doubt. This year, though, it's not even a lock on who's going to go number 1 because Tampa Bay just spent the day with Jameis Winston yesterday. But even then, with Jameis's off-the-field history, something could happen. He could say something. I don't think he will, but, just for the sake of argument, something could happen that drops him from the number 1. Maybe they meet Marcus Mariota and fall in love with him and he goes number 1. Maybe they just take Leonard Williams because they think he's the top guy in this draft. There's just so much up in the air, and this Combine hasn't helped. As much as it cleared some things up, it really hasn't helped clear up who's going to go where and what team's looking at what. But
Yeah.
it did give us some answers thanks to some guys who've risen up our big boards. So, Herbie, you want to dive into who's risen up your big board?
Yeah, this is a guy that I've loved since I saw him play. As a Virginia fan, I've always liked ACC DNs, and Vic Beasley has been my guy since I saw him 2 years ago. I mean, he's an absolute freak. He's 6'3", 246 is what he came in the Combine. He ran a 4.53, 35 reps on the bench. I mean, an absolute freak prospect who I don't think was giving enough recognition because he's coming from the ACC. I think he's a special talent. Comparable to Randy Gregory. The speed is huge. The 4.53 at the Combine is big. The 41-inch vert is huge. I mean, I think he's an absolute freak talent that, you can do a couple different things with. I think you want to keep him slim, and you want to be able. He could keep his hand off the dirt, like Terrell Suggs, or he could put his hand in the dirt as a defensive end. 6'3" is kind of that, kind of mid-range in between those two positions. I mean, he's an absolute freak talent that I don't think you pass up on in the first 10 picks if you need a player like that. If you need a pass rusher, which are always needed in the first round.
I think I like Vic Beasley a lot more than I did coming into the season. He definitely grew as a player. he kind of evolved into more of an actual pass rusher with moves and stunts inside, use his hands effectively rather than just beating his guy around the edge. But like you said, he does have that great speed that he showed off at the Combine. And he came to the Combine 20 pounds heavier, which I think was a huge thing for him. He was only played the season around 225 or 230. That's very light for a defensive end. Even a guy who might be standing up to play outside linebacker, that's still very light. I think he can pack on some more weight and still be an effective speed rusher. And it's going to be exciting to see where he ends up in this draft. I think he's firmly planted himself within the top 15. It's going to be interesting to see who either trades up for him or tries to go and get him just because of that explosive athleticism.
I don't necessarily know if he's a player that you draft up to get, because I think there's such an equal talent across those defensive ends in those first couple of picks. So you get Leonard Williams, Shane Ray. I mean, all those guys could go kind of. I don't know who's trading up to get him, but I think Vic. Jesus, we were talking about Daniel Jeremiah putting Dante Fowler at the third overall pick to Jacksonville, which just I don't think is going to happen. But I could easily see Randy Gregory or Vic Beasley going right there.
Yeah, for me, as far as risers go, we're gonna stay with the edge rushing category, and I'm gonna go with Bud Dupree out of Kentucky. Now, Dupree is a guy who a lot of people started to rave about this season. He's had a big year since Stoops took over that program, just had a very solid end to his career at Kentucky these past 2 seasons. But I was very skeptical. I watched some of his games tape and some of his highlights, and even some of his really explosive highlights. You're kind of like, it was the same thing I had with Vic Beasley. He just beat his guy around the end, and the offensive tackle couldn't get a hand on him. Well, at the Combine, he showed off not just the ability to have great speed and great explosiveness off the edge, but he ran that 4.56 40. He had a 42-inch vertical and a 138-inch broad jump. All those, and while he didn't do the bench press, which is something I'd really like to see because he measured in at 6'4", 270, all the broad jump, the high jump, and the vertical, and then that 40 time just show me that there's all kinds of untapped athleticism within this guy, that if you can just tweak that technique ever so slightly, he can be an effective player in the NFL, a very dangerous player in the NFL. And playing against the top competition, the SEC has obviously only helped him and helped him get better.
I like that pick a lot. I think he's always been one of my favorite guys going into this draft class.
Yeah, I haven't had a lot more than me for most of this process.
Yeah, and I don't think I've had him in my top 50. I forget where I had him in my last big board, but I've got him right. I think in the 10 to 20 range, which I think is perfect for him. When you compare him to Vic Beasley, obviously he's bigger, but he's more geared to that explosive type play, which are huge when they happen, but they happen a lot less. So there's a lot less consistency than what Vic Beasley has. But like you said, he is an absolute monster at 6'4", 270. I think we're all waiting to see him do the bench press. When you got a guy of that size that can get up that high in that vert, you got passes that are getting deflected all over the place, which is just which is a skill that is absolutely necessary in this new league with these quarterbacks who are running all over the place. So I think Bud Dupree is going to be an absolute steal, and which I'm assuming he goes, probably after 10, maybe after 15, but he'll be an absolute steal wherever he goes.
I have Bud at my 17th overall ranked prospect right now on my new big board. And I think but after not having him on the board before, I think that's very fair.
I've got Bud at 17 too.
Great minds think alike, man. And, I just think that's not just only a very fair place for him based on what we've seen on his tape and at this Combine, but I think that there's a lot of room for him to grow as he goes through goes through the Combine, but goes through more of his own personal workouts, does interviews with teams. I think a lot of people are going to fall in love with that size and that athleticism, and it's very hard not to. If he can, and as I mentioned, he's just a guy who needs to be coached up a little bit, and he can basically take all of that athletic talent after just a little bit of technique coaching and really use it effectively. You mentioned Terrell Suggs when talking about Vic Beasley. I think that Terrell Suggs, there's a lot of Terrell Suggs in Bud Dupree.
I think there's no doubt about that. I mean, two unbelievable talents with Vic and Bud. I mean, I think it's the year of the pass rusher this year, unlike last year in the offensive line. So it's gonna be it'll be fun to see these guys at the next level.
Well, with all these players rising up big boards, and there's obviously more than one for both of us, and you can check that out on the blog for some of the other guys who have risen up our big boards. That means that also people have fallen because they didn't do so well at the combine. So, Herbie, who is your biggest faller from this combine?
I had a couple. I had Eddie Goldman fall first, but he didn't really participate at the combine. So I'm going to go with Landon Collins, which which you probably hate me for, and I hate doing myself because I think he is no doubt the best defensive back in this draft class. And sadly, this is a reflection of what I think you can kind of either him or Trey Waynes, but I think no doubt he's the best safety. And it hurt me to move him from 6 down to 16, but I think you wanted to see some better numbers from him. Him and Vic Beasley had the same 40-yard dash, which is it's not terrible. You'd hate to see that more from a corner, but and he's a strong safety as well. It plays more of like an outside linebacker type, so I'll let him slide on that. The 35-inch vertical, I need better than that from Landon Collins, and the 120-inch broad, I need better than that as well. And then when you saw him do pass catching drills, obviously not a huge concern for the strong safety, but this is a league where safeties have to make picks. You saw him lose focus when he dropped one ball on the rest of his catches when you watched him in the combine. Like I said, I still think he's clearly the best safety in this draft, and I could see him easily going in the top 10 if a GM found that necessity. Obviously, like we said, this is a draft where we're not going to know that. I could see him doing it. I don't think it will happen, and I see him going in kind of the 10 to 20 range. He's going to be a steal in that range right there, and I think taking him in the top 10 is a reach, but potentially a necessary reach. But he's got it. He's my. I'm shocked that I made him drop. So he's my most shocking drop right now.
Yeah, for me, you're right. And from a lot of these top-tier safeties that you've seen go in the top 10, a la Ed Reed and Eric Berry, who, Landon was kind of anointed to be the next one of those style of guys. You wanted to see him running those 4.4s. You wanted to see a little bit better vertical, whatever it might be. I wasn't too worried because I watched his combine drills and all the coverage drills. He looked fine. I didn't see anything that really worried me. Like you said, I had him drop a couple spaces too. I had him drop behind Trey Waynes, but still think he's the best overall defensive back in this class. It's just one of those things where the safety position, for as important as people say it is, has become a little devalued as far as the top of the draft goes, because people believe they can find athletes throughout the top 4 rounds to play safeties, and that's a fair statement. For me, my biggest follower for a very similar reason is Shaq Thompson from Washington, who the jackknife of all trades, really explosive athlete when you put on the
their boy.
Exactly. I know, Herbie, that you love Shaq Thompson, probably even more than I do. And the 4.6, 440, only a 33-inch vertical, 117-inch broad jump. He did have a great 20-yard shuttle at 4.8 seconds, 4.08 seconds. But when you're the linebacker position is another position that has been completely devalued within the first round of the draft, which is obviously the one that we all focus on the most. And if Shaq, being this guy who, he's 6'1", 6'2", he made all those huge strip sack fumbles. He played running back for a lot of this season as well and was supposed to be this overall explosive talent on the defensive side of the ball, maybe even play some safety. You needed to really show out at the combine to put yourself in that top 15 picks. And he didn't. He put up pretty average linebacker numbers, what are still very good numbers and something that he can be proud of and really show off. But the combine wasn't great for him. We'll see if he can bounce back at his pro day, but you just didn't see that, that explosive extra gear that you expect to see from a player who is so highly touted as an athlete, even more than a football player.
And I agree with you. And the thing, it's such a devalued first-round pick, and I hate it so much because all of this makes me think about is Vontaze Burfict. It's like so many of these linebackers, their NFL appearance really transfers from their game tape. And I think that's going to be the same thing with Denzel Perryman and Bernardrick McKinney. They're probably not on a lot of people's big boards, and they might fall the second round. But those are honestly, when you look at their game tapes, those guys are first-round talents, even though they're probably not going to go in the first round. I mean, Denzel Perryman is an absolute killer. I mean, Shaq Thompson he's an incredible athlete, a guy that can play on both sides of the ball. I love those type of players. In college, I mean, you just don't find them. So they have that extra motor that brings that extra energy, and it's just not what you're just not going to see it in the combine, which really I think kind of hurts them more than anything. Which is why I really don't pay attention to linebackers, in the combine. Maybe 40s and that. And his 40 was okay, but yeah, you're right. I mean, linebackers in the first round are really devalued. You don't see them really going top 10, top 20 anymore.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that Shaq is a victim of his own position. And if he if he'd ran a 4.4, had a 40-inch vertical, he would have stayed in my top 15 players. But the simple fact is he didn't, and that makes him fall. I really was tempted to actually go with Arik Armstead here, the big defensive end out of Oregon. The reason I kind of avoided him, even though he was my overall biggest faller down my big board from 9 to 19, the reason I avoided him is simply because he doesn't really know how to play football yet. He was a basketball player at Oregon before joining the football team the past couple of years. So I'm going to kind of give him a pass. See, people are drafting him on his overall size and athletic ability. They're not drafting him solely on his workout numbers or his technique. So I think that Shaq Thompson is a guy who needed to show me more in his workouts. He didn't. He's going to be fine. He's probably still going to go in the first round. I had him going to the Cowboys in my last mock draft. In our upcoming mock draft, I'll probably have him at a similar position. But it's just unfortunate that guys like this who just play a certain position lose ground and lose money just because of the position they play and the numbers they put out at a combine without pads on.
Got to earn it now in this league.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for watching another edition of the Roll Tide Draft Blog. These were our risers and fallers up our big boards, thanks to this past week's NFL Combine. So please check for more posts and more conversations throughout the offseason as we gear up for this May's NFL Draft. Okay, so Coop and Kevin White.
Got it.
I'm going to pull up now before we get into things.
How many reps did Amari have on the bench?
What's up?
How many reps did Amari have on the bench?
He did not do the bench press.
He did not do the bench press, okay. That's what I thought. And is he an inch taller or shorter than Kevin White?
He is an inch shorter. So Kevin White measured in at 6'2"-ish, 6'3"-ish, and Amari Cooper measured in at about 6'1½".
Okay. Is Amari going to do the bench at his pro day, or is he
I
not
assume
going to
so.
Okay.
Just for the sake of doing it.
I don't think he's going to
Even
put
if
up
he
23.
did, it wouldn't shock me that much.
I don't think he's going to put up 23, but
No. I mean, that's not his game. Kevin White's game is, big boring people out of the way. So
yeah. Okay. I got an idea.
Pico Alonso stats.
Did you see what was the art? I think the article the other day was like it's called the Philadelphia Ducks.
Yeah. And it was Mother Duck, Chip Kelly, and the Philadelphia, like some variation of that. Which, I mean, we were talking about on the show last night, and it was just like, it kind of is bullshit. Like, if I was a not Oregon player, I started to kind of just see, people getting shipped off, I'd be a little pissed. I mean, $10 million in cap space, but still.
They were just talking about it, on ESPN. Like, you trade off your best player like that just because he doesn't fit your system. There is no job that is safe now.
Yeah. Well, not even that, but he had what? He had 2,000, almost 2,000, if not 2,000 yards. Or he had close to 2,000 yards last year. He had 1,300 yards. He was the third leading rusher in the NFL. What do you mean he doesn't fit your system? Like, that's a terrible excuse. He was awesome. He's just expensive.
And he deserves to be.
Yeah. Okay, so all right, I got Kiko up, but let's do Amari and Kevin White first. Okay. All right. We're back here on another edition of the Roll Tide Draft Blog, talking about this coming May's. Shit. Fucked up. Welcome back to another edition of the Roll Tide Draft Blog.
You're off your game today, dog.
I'm still a little under the weather. I had a long week of feeling like ass.
Yeah.
I've had a beer in like a week and a half, and it's messing with me. And have cold sweats every night. It's a problem.
Oh dear.
Welcome back to another edition of the Roll Tide Draft Blog. I'm Baker Lehman here with Herbie May, and we're discussing a lot of the positions going on here in this coming year's draft. I'm fucking terrible.
You want to hold off?
No.
Save these for a day?
Nah, I need to do these now because I have to do a ton of shit tomorrow.
All right. You want me to try and open it up?
I got it. I can do it. Do it.
Zone. Get in the zone.
Okay, flip it. There we go. Welcome back to the Roll Tide Draft Blog. I'm Baker Lehman here with Herbie May, and we're going to be comparing a lot of prospects coming up in this month, this May. Oh, okay, yeah, open it up. I'm fucking dead. I'm in my own head.
Fuck. Now I'm under pressure. Hold on, let me close this door. All right. Welcome back to another edition of the Roll Tide Draft Blog. I'm here with my partner in crime, Baker Lehman. As always, we are going to be comparing a lot of positions in this upcoming draft. And I think one of our biggest after this past combine has got to be Amari Cooper and Kevin White. Shake, I mean, how do you compare the two, and who do you take first?
Well, absolutely. They've been two of the top receivers in the country all year. Obviously, Amari was second in the nation receiving. Kevin White was also in that top 5. And, apples to oranges when you're comparing their numbers. But I really think that there's some discrepancy recently between whether Kevin White overtook Amari Cooper as the top receiver on the board. He's pretty much been the top receiver on both of our boards all season. I personally, even coming from Tuscaloosa, don't think that there's any reason to change that number 1 positioning, even though Kevin White had an outstanding combine and I think solidified himself as that number 2 wide receiver and even probably moved himself into the top 10 to 12 picks. That being said, I just don't think that he did enough. A 40 and all these workouts outside pads did enough to overshadow what Amari did on the field this season.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about that. I think if anything, Kevin White just his combine numbers brought him in closer to Amari. I think there was some question. Obviously, there was a different quarterback throwing the ball to Kevin White, and it wasn't Blake Sims, and it wasn't A.J. McCarron. So, when you look at the numbers, Kevin White, I mean, what an animal. I mean, he's the type of guy that's going to beat you with his strength, and he's going to go up and get the ball. He's going to shove you out of the way. Amari's the type of guy that he's one of the smoothest wide receivers we've seen in the past 5 years, and he's going to beat you with his route running. He's going to beat you with his finesse, and he is rarely going to drop a ball. So, at this point, Kevin White could potentially go before him. I do not think it's going to happen. I see Amari Cooper dead. I mean, if we're talking about dead set positions, I can see Jameis going first to Tampa Bay, and I can see Amari going fourth to the Oakland Raiders. So, I think those are the 2 most dead set positions in this draft right now, and I don't think you can let Amari fall. If Kevin White does go fourth to the Raiders, I don't think you can let him fall I think it's 10th to the Rams. I just don't think that's going to happen. So it's going to come down to the GM and what type of receiver you want to draft and let your quarterback, throw the ball to.
Yeah, and Kevin White, as we've talked a lot about, he really blew up this season. Really just came onto the scene in that first game against Amari Cooper in Alabama. He had a big game tearing up the Tide secondary and really just continued on that hot first game for the entire year. Now, I think that also has a lot to do with the West Virginia offense, which is, similar to what you've seen with a lot of the Oklahoma State wide receivers, Dana Holgorsen, who came over there from Oklahoma State to West Virginia. Just a lot of inflated numbers, and that doesn't mean that Kevin White isn't going to be an excellent NFL wide receiver. I really think he is. But his 109 catches and 1,400 yards and 10 touchdowns might mean a little less than Amari's 124 catches, 1,600 yards, and 16 touchdowns, simply because they came in an offense that really stresses throwing the ball and throwing the ball deep. And I think that Kevin White showed can definitely break the system. He's not a guy who's just put up numbers simply because of the system, but I think those numbers were a little inflated simply because he was playing in a 4 wide receiver offense.
Yeah, and then I think there's also the bigger picture, which I'm sure some people either agree bringing this up or don't agree. But when you look at a conference, who do you want to take? Do you want to take the guy who's been playing the best defenses in the country, and Amari Cooper, and has been beating guys on a regular basis, or do you want to take a guy from the Big 12 who he plays CBU at Oklahoma, and he plays some good teams, but they're just not the same. And then when you look at the success of Alabama wide receivers compared to the success of West Virginia wide receivers, Tavon Austin, I don't know. Tavon Austin or Julio Jones, who are you going to take? So I think you have to look at that as well. But I don't think it's tough. If I'm sitting there, if I'm sitting there and I'm the Oakland Raiders, Amari Cooper all day.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned earlier that just route running and just how smooth Amari Cooper is, and you saw him run a fast 40. Amari had a 4.42, and while Kevin White did have that 4.35, which was a little unexpected for a wide receiver of his size and style, there was some discrepancy on whether Amari Cooper's 40 was actually faster. There might have been a mistiming of the clock, but either way, it kind of got brushed under the rug because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, and they're going to look at the game tape before they look at the combine numbers. And like you mentioned, though, just how smooth and how good his routes are, how crisp he is how crisp he is running those routes, catching the football very naturally. I think that speaks to not only his ability overall as a receiver, but the fact that he played in that pro-style offense that Lane Kiffin runs at Alabama. Kevin White, while he was a very explosive wide receiver, really uses his body well to shield defenders away from the ball and make those big catches, those big 50-50 catches. I think that because of the offense that he runs in West Virginia, it kind of hurts him from a technique standpoint moving on to the NFL. It's not going to be that big a transition. It's not like running the Oregon offense and going to the NFL, as we've discussed with Marcus Mariota. But still, you saw even Michael Crabtree have a little bit of a transition period from going from being the number 1 at Texas Tech in that wide-open Mike Leach offense to being the number 1 in San Francisco. It took a season or two.
I think there's a lot of positions like this. I think there's a lot of comparisons to be made in this draft, and it's all going to be pretty exciting. Stay with us. We're going to be talking about one of the bigger trades in the offseason to date in our next video. Shake?
Yep. Thanks, guys. All right. Well, downtime, so don't need you. Don't need you. Okay, so Kiko and LaShawn. So, and we just remember this trade isn't official until next week.
Okay.
So I wonder.
It's Tuesday, right?
Yes, officially next Tuesday or Wednesday, I believe.
Dude, in the past couple of years, that's been an understated deadline, but it is going to be big this year.
Yeah.
All right, you want me to kick it off? Or you want to try it again?
I can. I'm gonna rally.
All right.
All right. Here we go. Welcome back to it. Oh, video switched over. Welcome back to another edition of the Roll Tide Draft Blog. I'm Baker Lehman here with Herbie May. And Herbie, last night we got some outstanding breaking news coming out of the NFL. So we're going to move away from the NFL draft for a moment and focus just more on the overall offseason. As the Philadelphia Eagles and Buffalo Bills agreed on trading linebacker Kiko Alonso, former Oregon player, to the Philadelphia Eagles for stud running back LeSean McCoy. Herbie, you texted me maybe within the next 30 seconds of this news breaking. What's just your initial reaction to this trade?
I was in my business communications class, and we have a crazy teacher who doesn't allow cell phones at all. And I saw it out of the corner of my eye in my backpack, and I look up and I go, oh. She was like, what? And I was like, nothing. Just good class today. But this is big. I mean, it's unofficial until Tuesday. And did he go to the Philadelphia Eagles, or is it the Philadelphia Ducks? I can't really yet. But I mean, this is big. I mean, this says a lot about what Chip Kelly has the power to do. I mean, they basically handed him the keys, and they said, here you go. Here's the Philadelphia Eagles. Do what you will. And the fact that he has the balls to ship off Shady McCoy to the Buffalo Bills for one of his former Oregon players, Kiko Alonso, it shows that he's got all the power in the world to do anything. And at this point, I can't pick a winner or a loser, because I think that I think it's a perfect trade for both teams. It's a necessity for Philly, and it's a necessity for Buffalo. And I think Shady's 26. He's going to go to Buffalo, be the main guy, and he's going to kill it. And all I can think about is the way that Chip Kelly handles the next move and they handles its draft pick is going to determine whether Philly is a winner or a loser in the draft. So we won't know until draft day.
As you mentioned, the Philadelphia Ducks, and Chip Kelly has now been nicknamed Mother Duck, as he's been acquiring a lot of his former players and former recruits at the University of Oregon to his Philadelphia Eagles team. But I look at this, and while, yes, the whole Oregon thing with Kiko is definitely, I think, the first thing that people look to, I look at LeSean McCoy, getting a little slighted by the Philadelphia Eagles, who he is from Philadelphia. He's played football in Philadelphia and in Pennsylvania pretty much his entire life.
He's never left.
Yeah, went to Pitt, from Philadelphia, and he's from Harrisburg, but that's a suburb of Philadelphia. But just getting shown the door. He's done nothing but produce. He had a career year with 17 touchdowns in 2011. He had a career rushing last year with 1,600 yards. And this year, outside of whiny fantasy owners like myself, he had an outstanding year. He was the third leading rusher in the NFL with 1,300 yards. And yeah, sure, he only had 5 touchdowns. But at the end of the day, Chip Kelly doesn't care about my fantasy team. He cares about the fact that he's trying to win football games with that rushing offense that he has. It is a running attack. It's not a passing attack. He's molded a little more into a passing attack, but let's not kid ourselves. The Oregon / Chip Kelly / Philadelphia Eagles offense is about running the football. And while Kiko Alonso is a great upgrade for the Philly defense that needs an upgrade, who is their running back now? Are they going to draft someone? Is this just a cap space clearing move? Because LeSean McCoy is a lot more expensive than Kiko Alonso. It's about, I believe Kiko Alonso is going to make $750,000 this year. LeSean McCoy is going to make about $10 million. Yeah, I'm thinking cap space, but at the same time, I feel like if you were going to trade LeSean, your best time to do it was on draft day.
There's got to be a move in place, and I was talking to a bunch of guys last night about what the move could be. I said, the first thing that popped into my mind, and it was kind of a gut thing, Todd Gurley, maybe. Is that the team that makes the unbelievable, mind-blowing draft day risk if you take Todd Gurley at whatever pick it is, 20? Or is this some sort of scheme to trade, to issue a trade with the Redskins to come up and maybe something for happened with RG3 maybe? I don't know. I'm very, very interested to see, but at this point, by pulling this move, you basically got two things. I've got two things on my mind. A, there's got to be a plan in place. B, this is a huge risk for the Philadelphia Eagles, because if this does not go right, not only is Chip Kelly, look like kind of an idiot, but he's also going to lose his locker room, because this instills that, like, if you're not a part of the Chip Kelly plan, if you're not part of that, him taking the reins, if you're not worth $10 million and you're not the best player on the team, then you don't have you don't have a job set in stone. You could be out of there tomorrow. Kerry Williams getting axed. It's a risk, and it's a risk to take with his own locker room.
And it's not like Kiko Alonso's a slouch. Obviously, he tore his ACL this past year, which was unfortunate for the Bills. But I think the Bills were willing to do this mostly because their defense was still so good without him. But he had 159 tackles, 4 pass breakups, 2 sacks, a forced fumble, and 4 interceptions his rookie year. So the guy's a stud linebacker. There's no doubt about that in my mind. He's a cheap deal. But as you mentioned, with losing that locker room potentially, Herbie, if you didn't go to Oregon, do you just not mean anything to Chip Kelly now? Is he willing to ship anyone off to other teams simply because, oh, this kid went to Oregon, he's pretty good. I remember him being good on my team. But LaShawn McCoy, yeah, we'll find another one of you. But we don't know if we can find another Kiko Alonso who, was one season in the NFL, basically. To me, and I'm going to use this as a segue to ask my next question. To me, trading LaShawn McCoy would have been a great idea because there apparently was a bit of a rift between him and Chip Kelly. It would have been a great idea on draft day, because on draft day, you can trade LaShawn McCoy, some other group of picks, or maybe another player, and your first-round pick to move up and draft, the golden duck, if you will, in Marcus Mariota to run that Chip Kelly offense, who there's been so many rumors about. Chip Kelly said he wants Marcus Mariota. The Eagles want Marcus Mariota. I'm sure the city of Philadelphia wants him at this point. Why wait? Not necessarily. I don't want to use the word waste, but why use your best trade asset now instead of using it to move up in the draft to get your golden guy, Marcus Mariota?
I mean, was there not a better move than on draft day to call the New York Jets and say, "Here, take Shady McCoy, give us that pick, so I can get Marcus Mariota"? I mean, there wasn't a sure.
Even, the Raiders, any of those guys between that, that 3 to 6 range that could totally be available for a trade. And I wonder now, you mentioned them maybe taking Todd Gurley. I think they'd be more targeting Melvin Gordon as a replacement, who's a similar running back to Shady McCoy, more of the home run threat that Chip Kelly looks for in his running backs. But that aside, do you think that there is still a plan in place to get Marcus Mariota to Philadelphia in some way?
I mean, there has to be some sort of plan. I mean, you make this move, and there has to be something on his mind. You know what? When you give a guy the keys like this, you can't just pull the trigger on one of the bigger trades in the past 5 years, maybe. I don't know. I mean,
absolutely.
Maybe longer. That you can't make this move without having something in mind. But and you think like there might be a move for Marcus Mariota, but what is it? There's nothing that moves 20 up to the top 4 left on that team, I don't think. So, I'm not, Jeremy Maclin, no. Fletcher, no. It just, it's just not. Yeah, so I don't know what the plan is. I really don't. And maybe there are two big name guys that they're going to ship off who aren't a part of the plan that they'll do on draft. I don't know. It's going to be wild. What it does is it flips a lot of that first round on its head.
Absolutely. And we're going to have more mock drafts coming out here that if the Eagles make another move, that really could just wash away anything that we say. But it's like you said. It's just you just gave away your biggest trading chip, and if you were planning on trading him, why not try and get the guy that you're really really excited about, and could be the prize of your offense and the center focus of your franchise, rather than just upgrading with a straight-up deal with a linebacker. Now, if this had been Kiko Alonso, a second-round draft pick, 2015 or 2016 first round draft pick, something like that, that you could then package with your first round draft, just extra picks, extra assets to package with your first round pick to move up, it would make a lot more sense. But it's a straight up deal, one player for one player, that you don't have anyone to trade now. Because like you said, if you trade Jeremy Maclin, you're out a number one receiver. If you try and trade away one of your tight ends, no one wants Brent Selleck for a first round draft pick anymore. And you're not trading Zach Ertz most likely. I think right now that the Philadelphia Eagles, unless they're willing to give up like what the Washington Redskins gave up to move up in this draft, they might have just crippled their franchise for the next few years. Honestly, unless they think that Chris Polk and potentially Marcus Mariota can really get the job done, and they don't need first-round draft picks for the next few years, move up to get Mariota, and use that combination, and they think that they can make it work. We haven't seen the Redskins exactly be the talk of the town since trading up to get Robert Griffin.
Yeah, and I think this is why we love the draft and the offseason so much, because I think we can, I believe something pretty cool is going to happen, just because Chip Kelly is not a stupid guy, and I think he knows exactly what it takes to win football games. And I just think that something cool is really going to happen, and I think he's probably using it's a lot of cross first round, second round talent, so he might be looking at those first two rounds as a first round to him, because it all kind of piles over. So I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
It's always exciting here on the Roll Tide Draft Blog once it's the off season. So please keep up with more of our posts and videos. We'll have our next mock draft coming to you very, very, very shortly. And check out our updated big boards and any more breaking news that might come out that gets Herbie May and I excited. So once again, thank you for watching another post on the Roll Tide Draft Blog.
That was good.